Good morning and welcome to Patriot, Lament. This is Joshua Bennett. We have a very special guest with us today, one that I don't think needs too much introduction, at least for folks that listen to our show. It is the great Dr. Ron Paul, one of my heroes. In fact, a hero of many of us in the Liberty Movement. Dr. Paul, welcome to the show, and thank you.
Be with you. That's nice.
I just wanted to say real quick, too, that you're very inspirational to me in my libertarian walk. And actually also in my Christian walk, you are. Very much so.
Well, that's nice. Oh, good.
I wanted to ask you a few things. You're with the Ron Paul Institute, and tell me a little bit about, if you would, why you came, what had you... what were you thinking when you started the Institute? What were your goals with that after coming out of Congress?
Oh, you're talking about the Institute for Peace and Prosperity?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Well, actually, Daniel McAdams, who was doing my research on foreign policy for almost 10 years in Washington, came to me when he knew I would be leaving Congress and asked if we would consider, continuing with what we've been doing, is promoting this foreign policy that I've talked about. And he was concerned that nobody would talk precisely about the foreign policy that I had been advocating. So I said, yes, I'm all for that. So he was the one that stimulated my interest and sort of put the program together. Of course, we worked together on it, and we have our web page, and we do a lot of internet broadcasting on a daily basis. It's not exactly for the Institute, but most of the time it has a lot to do with foreign policy, and he's a co-host of that show. But the Institute's been very, very successful. It's not huge, doesn't have a huge budget, but we're getting many, many people coming to the website, and the interest has been very good, and I think we're filling a void because we frequently would like to work and have attempted to work with the progressive Democrats, and there are some good ones. I work with Dennis Kucinich and all, but they sort of wimp out when a Democrat is president. So the progressive anti-war group wasn't doing so well with Obama as president. So I thought there was definitely room for this, and certainly the average Republican is not going to fill that void because they're much too hawkish for me.
Yes, that's for sure. With your the Ron Paul Liberty Report that you and Daniel McAdams do, I think it's wonderful. How much preparation? I mean, it's got to take a lot of your time. You come out with one every day. And I do enjoy that.
It does take some, because I was thinking the other day, the program is short, 15 to 20 minutes or so. It's a short program. People say, oh, that's easy. But if you do this on TV, or if you have some help, somebody's doing some research for you and putting this stuff up there and preparing it for you. But no, we have to stay alert. We usually talk the night before, and then in the morning we decide absolutely what the subject will be. We have a couple hours to finalize it, and then we enjoy doing it, and it's more a relaxed discussion is the way we see it. But there's been some who are interested in foreign policy have claimed this is a very important message that we get out there, and it's not provided in many other places.
No, I think it's absolutely great, and the way I looked at it when I first started watching the Liberty Report, it was like having just two friends having a conversation across the table about foreign policy. That's great. And could you talk to me just a little bit about I know that you talk a lot about the Fed and stuff, and I know actually the Fed has something to do with foreign policy. Why is a message of peace so important for prosperity?
Well, there's so much harm that comes from it, and it's sort of this acceptance that wars are here forever, and they claim the Bible tells us that, and so they sort of accept it. In the book that I write, Swords in the Plowshares, I want to try to change people's attitude that it doesn't have to be that way. The natural instincts for most of us is for peace, and that most people don't want to go to war. And of course, the dictators, the ones who provoke the big wars, understand that very much. So they know the tool war propaganda, and Hitler used it, the Soviets used it, but our country uses it too, because before we went into Iraq and the different places, the people didn't want another war, and yet they build up the animosity and the hatred, and you have to have Hitler to go after. And so they know what they're doing, but there's special interest behind it. And to me, it's just sad that the people get lulled into this. And what I try to do is wake people up that your natural instincts for peace is what you should follow, and not fall into the trap of accepting what the government tells us. And there's a fertile field for this message right now, because a lot of people now say, I don't even trust my government anymore. I don't believe them, which is very, very good. So somebody who tries to tell us the truth, a guy like Edward Snowden, he becomes, a criminal, and they want to try him for treason. And so we're in a big battle for the truth. But I just think that there's the natural tendency for people to want peace, and of course, war is so costly. It destroys our liberties, it destroys lives, it destroys our economy. It does so much unnecessary harm that it's a shame that we don't do a better job in selling peace. But the propagandists, want to turn it around and say, well, Ron Paul is for peace, he doesn't want to take care of us, he's unpatriotic, he doesn't support the troops, and on and on. But the military, of course, know differently, and I think I was as pleased as anything during the campaign that I got more support than all the rest of them together from the military.
Yeah.
So that to me tells me that even the military, and I was in the military for 5 years, and the last thing I wanted Johnson in the 1960s to do was to, spread the war, expand the war in Vietnam. So people in the military, why do they want to have you could believe in a military and defend our country, but to have the military to be involving in all these civil strifes around the world and causing the trouble, I don't think most the military people even want to think about doing that. They go in for pretty good intentions of believing that they can provide national defense. But I think that has to change too, because I don't think we can trust our government to say that this policy is for national defense. Matter of fact, it's for the special interest from the military industrial complex to the banking industry and a lot of other people.
And I remember one thing that you said I thought was so wonderful when you were running for president, when you said, I do support the troops. That's why I want to bring them home. What else that was perfect. Your book, Swords and Plowshares, I have that. It's very wonderful. It's really neat to kind of see, and I don't think it's just me. Also, I've listened to several of your interviews about it. It's really neat to see a personal side of you that none of us know, I guess. What made you want to share your personal life with us like that? Your personal feelings about it? Because it's really good. It's a very personal book.
The issue, of course, was very important to me, so I just got to thinking, well, when did I first start thinking about this? A lot of times, like if I meet you and I'll say, oh, Joshua, when did you get interested? Who influenced you? What happened? Did you read a book or did you know somebody? Then I sort of asked myself this question: when did I become so adamantly opposed to war? And then I had to dissect it out, because even though I'm believing, and my book reveals this, that instinctively I was opposed to war, and this was the reason, I even went to medical school, but I still hadn't sorted all this out. And, by the time I got into Congress, by that time I had a firm understanding of my instincts being correct. So many of us, have good instincts on economics and foreign policy, and it's beaten out of us by the establishment, the school system, the government, the movies, everybody else, and they teach you that if you don't go along with the status quo, you're unpatriotic. And it was when I discovered that you don't have to be unpatriotic to follow your instincts, because there are some good reasons for us to do this. And then if we look at our history, the founders weren't advocating this. They weren't perfect individuals, but they tried to keep us out of this trouble by prohibiting the executive branch, the king, our presidents, from going to war on their own. And yet this very day, today's program that I did was, the whole idea that Obama is once again expanding the war over in Syria. So that to me is a serious, serious flaw.
What do we do is, I guess this is a question people always ask me, and I don't know. What do we do about things like that? What are practical things? I know that our job is to win the hearts and minds. How is that the only thing we can do? What do you tell people to encourage them to keep going? Because it seems pretty. It seems pretty. I mean, when the Syria thing didn't happen a year or so ago, that was such a felt like a victory. It's like, we didn't go to war, and now it's like, didn't mean anything. Maybe, I don't know.
Well, there's always something to be done in different manner, but still, you have to get support from the people for a policy. The bad guys know it, and they'll use their propaganda, and they'll get 50-60% to go along with the war. But I think the frustration that people feel is, well, how am I going to convert that 51%? Well, you really don't have to. You have to get the leadership in a country, the people who are writing the books and the movies and the newspapers and doing the radio and all of these things, and professors in school, to get them to understand that. And if they're in leadership positions, then the attitudes would change. Then you have to show the majority that their best interests are served by changing the foreign policy and the monetary policy and economic policy. And that's where I think we're making great strides. I think that there's a tremendous increase. The young people that I meet with are just fantastic. Last week I was up at YAL in Washington. There are 350 college guys, and I thought it was just great. And so that's where the difference is. And it's still sort of frustrating because we might win a battle. 2 years ago we won a battle, and Obama wanted to get authority to bomb, and it was denied to him because we gave the other side of it. But of course, there's still powerful forces that went and said, "We'll just go around them. They won't care." And that's generally what happens. But people have to be alert. They have to know how to defend their position. Education is key to this. We have to just not say, well, we love liberty. People say, yeah, you love it because you want to go smoke your marijuana or something like that. You have to be able to show why it's a moral issue, it's a practical issue, it's an economic issue. To me, the most important thing is a moral issue, is that we have our natural God-given right to our lives and to the fruits of our labor. And whenever that's been tried, it produces the most prosperous and peaceful society one can have. And when you leave that, then it gets worse. So in our early history, we generally follow those rules much better than today. But today, the Constitution doesn't mean very much. So now we're in a battle between these new interests and the refinement. I think the understanding of liberty and foreign policy is more refined than ever before. So I think that we're making great strides, but we're going to have to go through some turmoil because they're not going to give up their power. And that is why my conclusion in my book is that, yes, it would be nice to change the Congress. It would be nice for people to take their oath of office seriously, and the president wouldn't declare these wars. But I think it's going to come to a point where the people who pay for the wars, the people who get killed and wounded and pay for it, they're going to have to say, well, I'm only going to fight wars that are defending my country, and when enough people do that, they won't have, they won't have to do it. But I even admit in the book that I wasn't one of those in the Vietnam era. I hadn't refined my ideas, so it's going to take a lot more. It's going to be easier to come up with a transition once the bankruptcy's here. The Soviets didn't become lovers of peace when the Soviet system broke up. They went broke. so maybe going broke won't hurt us. And I've always said that we ought to go broke, and if we lose everything materialistically, but if we have our liberties, it wouldn't take us long to get back on our feet. People say, no, it takes a lot of sacrifice, to correct these problems. I said, well, if I get my liberty back and I can keep what I earn and you get out of my way, that is no sacrifice on my part. So that's what we have to convince people of.
When in your in Sword and the Plowshares, even that, is a reference from the Bible out of Isaiah. One thing that I really love about you is that you're not ashamed to speak your mind about your faith. And in this book, it's pretty obvious that you're a man of faith. One thing that I watched happen to you when you were running for president, when you're in South Carolina, and you brought up the golden rule. And so courageous. You just spoke the truth, and you got booed in the Bible Belt. I just about started crying. I still watch it and just remember how I felt that day watching that. Could I ask you, how did you feel when that when that happened that day?
It wasn't one of these things that really got to him as, oh my goodness, the end of the world.
Yeah.
In my mind, it was, these people have a problem. It wasn't me. It wasn't me that had the problem. I was very confident, and I hope I come across as being very confident and understanding about markets and freedom without being arrogant and saying, I'm going to push it down your throat, type of thing. And I think that makes all the difference in the world. So if people come to an understanding about, say, Austrian economics and come to the conclusion that welfare is wrong, welfare for the poor leads to welfare for the rich, and all the other reasons why welfare fails and contradicts everything about a free society, you have to be very confident about that, because the bad guys are always going to paint you. You're totally heartless. You don't care about the poor. I've been accused of that all the time. You're going to throw everybody sick out on the street. Mm-hmm. And I practiced medicine before we had Medicare and Medicaid. And believe me, they weren't out in the streets. People got care. We used to have charity hospitals and church hospitals. And yet today is when people can't pay for their health care, and guess who makes all the money? The insurance companies and the drug companies. It's corporatism at its worst, and this is the real problem if you want poverty and bad care. And yet they turn around and tell us that we're the ones who don't care, but everything the opposition, the interventions have done, have destroyed the middle class. And we have to, pin that responsibility on them and not let them get away with saying, well, it's you guys that believe in freedom. You just can't be that radical. That's what they tell you. You mean you would never go and bail out these countries that are having problems, either economically or they're having military problems? And the answer is no. I don't have the authority to draft you or take your money to try to solve some of those problems. It doesn't mean I don't care, and it doesn't mean I'm going to prevent you from doing it if you want to. But we have to know, what the answers are and be confident in it, and then you can, under your breath, say they are the ones that have the problem.
Yes. Wow. The one thing that's just has bothered me, and I wondered if I could get your quick opinion on it. Why do you think the religious folks are recent? I don't know how long it's been going on, but they seem so pro-war, especially since this last with Iraq and Afghanistan. It's just pervading the churches, and the religious folks they're just pro-war. Do you have any? Why? Do you understand that at all?
No, I don't know it completely, because it varies from one to other, but I think evangelical Zionism has something to do with it, because it isn't like they've made a military or constitutional decision. They made a decision, they base it on a devout religious belief and conviction, and they've been taught this in their churches, and the preachers have taught them this, and they feel that they're as right about their policy as I feel about my interpretation of what Christ taught us. He was supposed to be the Prince of Peace, not advocating preemptive war. But I think that the Zionism, the evangelical Zionism had a lot to do with it. But then others come in and join them. The people who want to protect oil, they join, and you have the military-industrial complex, and people just put it all together and say, well, everybody's opposed to it, on the conservative side, and you can't be a Republican and you can't be a conservative unless you support these wars. And in one of our debates, they asked us, what was the moral issue, the greatest moral issue that we're facing today? And I said this concept of preventative or preemptive war, that you can go to war to stop war. What a ridiculous notion, and it's such a dangerous thing. We become the aggressor, and that is what has happened. So it is that principle, and that's the Bush principle, and he does it in the name of Christian faith. So it's a gross distortion from my viewpoint of what the Christian faith is all about. But that didn't start just during the Bush administration. It's been going on for a long time, probably 100 years, and I think the idealism of Woodrow Wilson had a little bit to do with that. It had nothing to do with national defense when we decided at the end of World War I that we had to go, and participate in that war, which as far as I'm concerned was the beginning of World War II. The whole thing was a continuous war, and it hasn't yet stopped.
Goodness. Well, we're about need to let you go, but could I ask you real quick about homeschooling and the importance of that? We recommend your Ron Paul curriculum here. My kids went through it last year and just loved it. It was actually pretty nice because they actually wanted to do it, which was very strange since it was schoolwork.
And hopefully it's a program where the parents aren't quite as burdened as with other school programs. I mean, they're supposed to, be self-disciplined.
Yes.
And no, I'm as excited about that. And after you just hearing me talk about how important it is to change people's mind and education, you've already recognized that our homeschooling program is designed to approach history differently. It's going to approach economics differently and monetary policy differently and foreign policy differently. And it'll be coming from the freedom philosophy. And you say, oh, you mean it's stereotyped, it's overly original in the freedom philosophy? Yeah, it is, because it contradicts the statism of a government-owned monopoly system that just propagandizes and teaches our kids to believe all the nonsense that we've been putting up with and why we're in this mess. So, yes, we're looking for a certain percentage of young people that can get into leadership, but it is very designed, and I purposely did not put a lot of religious teachings in there. Everybody knows my position, but I think there's a place for schooling which talks about liberty, and therefore then we are under constant threat that they will close down our religious schools and our homeschooling and all this. But if you have the principle of liberty and freedom of choice in education, then any religion can do it, anybody can opt out, and that's a different debate.
Yes.
But the principle of liberty should bring us all together and say, yes, we're for liberty and freedom of choice in education because I want to make my own choice. And that is the purpose of the program, is to show the importance of liberty is really bringing people together, because all of us will use our liberties in a different fashion, and we should be tolerant of those that use their liberty as long as they follow the non-aggression principle and they don't hurt people. We might want to persuade them, certain habits are bad, but we don't want a theocracy. I do not like the idea of theocracy, and I don't think a Christian theocracy is any better than an Islamic theocracy.
No,
so
for sure.
I want to avoid the authoritarian approach to education and religion.
Yes. Well, sir, thank you very much for being here. We're up on the time here.
Okay.
Dr. Paul, thank you so much for what you do. Thank you so much for the Ron Paul Institute. Please give the folks there our best, and I appreciate so much how bold you are. You really give us a lot of encouragement and the will to keep going along after the cause of liberty.
Okay, Joshua. Nice to be with you.
Thank you, sir. You have a good day.
Bye-bye.
All right, that wraps it up for today. Thanks for listening, and please remember to go to the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity at ronpaulinstitute.org. Also, check out the Ron Paul Liberty Report at ronpaullibertyreport.com, where Dr. Paul and Daniel McAdams do a video each day concerning the important issues that we face. Also, please buy Dr. Ron Paul's new book, Swords into Plowshares. Check that out on Amazon.com, or you can write us at patriotslament@gmail.com. Request the book with your address, and we'll send you a free book. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.